Dr. Heilige Mishnah. Ir sheyesh ba'avodah kacham chutzala. I'm sorry. Ir sheyesh ba'avodah kacham. There was an ear that they had Yom Eid and they were Bali Avodah Zara. But chutzala mutter. The people who live in the suburbs out of the city, that they're not implicated with the city, and those people you could do business with. The Gemara is going to want to know how close chutzala is allowed. Right near the city, maybe they have to be further away from the city. How close or how far away do they have to be from the city to be able to say they're not connected to the city and it's mutter? What if it was the opposite scenario? If they were out of the city, mutter. What about Ma'u Leilech L'Sham? Are you allowed to travel to a city on Yom Eideyim, a city of Avodah Zara, even not on Yom Eideyim? Are you allowed to travel to a city of Avodah Zara? Zok to Gemara, the question here is Marasayin. So Zok to the Mishnah, Bizman Shaderech Meyuchedes Lo'isamokim. Now, why are you going to the city? Of course, not to be Avodah Zara. You have someone that you need to meet there. But people who see you going there think you're going to do Avodah Zara. So therefore, Bizman Shaderech Meyuchedes Lo'isamokim. Let's say you are on a train and there's only one stop on the train, that city. Then it would be usher, because anyone seeing you on that train knows you're going to that city. But from what if there's another stop after the city that takes you to a different city? Then it will be mutter, because people will not necessarily think you're going to the city of Avodah Zarah. Rather, they might think you're going to the next city. Okay. Zok Tehelig Gemara. How far away is chutzala that we say there won't be an issue to do business with such people? Rashi says Itluza Shel Aza was very, very close to the city of Aza. So let's have a look at Rashi. How far away does it have to be? So Rab Chanina said Itluza Shel Aza, which means Itluza was the shuk shel behemois that serviced the city of Aza, that was outside of the city. Kama Itlis, that nan shoichlin beitlis v'nim korim beitlis. Aza was a ir shel plishtim. V'haya ba'avodas kachavim. It was a city of Avodah Zara. V'yachutzala yishuv samach lir ma'od. And right out of the city, but very close to the city, there was another community. And in that community, they're not Avodah Zara. You're allowed to do business with that community. However, there was another version of how this happened. So it wasn't Reb Chanina coming out and saying it. The question was asked to Reb Chanina, what if it's a suburb, a community that's so very close to the actual city? What would be the halacha? Omer Loi, Reb Chanina responded, you clearly never went to the city of Tzur, where Isa Yisrael or sheshaftu shtei kederes agavi kirachas. You never saw that a Yid and a Goy can share one stove to put their kederes. There's going to be a three-way machloikis as to what Reb Chanina meant by that. But let's just see Rashi here. It was very, very close to the city. Would you be allowed to do business with these people or not? Tzur is a Ir Yisrael. It was a city where both Yidden and Goyim lived in. So now let's see if we can understand what did Reb Chanina mean when he said it should be just like Tzur. So over there, they were shafstu, a yid and a guy was shafstu shtei kederes agabe kira achas. The chachamim were not concerned. What is the potential concern that the chachamim were not worried about? That's what there's going to be a discussion about now, a three-way machlokes, and depending on how severe the concern was, that would tell us how severe a concern the Chanin in our Mishnah is paskening. We don't need to worry about the city of Avodah Zarah. So let's see Rashi. Even though the Isser and the Heter is really close to each other, similar to in our Shaila of our Mishnah, or in our Mishnah where it's Chutzala, so if it was allowed there, Hachanami Alpha Pisha B'nei Ha'ir Her Asurin, the B'nei Ha'ir, who it's usher to do business with them, Smuchin Levnei Chutzala, they're very, very close to the community that's right outside of the city. She'ein Lam Avodas Kachavim, Hayoim, they don't have Avodah Zara today. Loi Choshu, we're not Choshes. So Zok to Gemara, let's understand exactly what degree of Isser we're discussing. My Loi Choshu Lem Chacham. Omer Abaye, the Chachamim weren't even Choshed for a very severe Isser, even in Isser Deraisa. And the concern with the Shavsu Shtei K'deris would have been Mishum Basar Nevela. There might have been a concern that there was an Isser Deraisa over here. And Lo Yamrinon, Dilma Mahader Apei Yisrael Achure, V'shadi Ovid Kachavim Nevela B'Kteira. We don't say that we don't need to worry that the Jew might look somewhere else, he might get distracted, and that the Goy will put Nevela into his pot. That's a very severe Isser. It's an Isser Deraisa of Nevela. We're not Choshed that. To the Kavasah, similarly, there's a potential for a severe Isser that Abaye is saying that Reb Chanina holds we don't need to worry about it in the case of Avodah Zarah. What is the severe Isser? The Kavasah Hanami Lechashu Lem Chachamim Mishum Demei Avodas Kacham. They're not even worried that the money that you're being paid for the behemoth that you're selling to these people is literally money from the Avodah Zarah itself. That will be an Isser Deraisa. So the Chiddush here is, according to Abaye, is Reb Chanina is even being mekel to sell to them, even though there's a concern that there might be an Isser Deraisa, it might be Demei Avodah Zarah. Let's see how Rashi explains this. What is the chashash there that we can create a similar level of chashash that here as well will we make along the leil of hacha dekavasa? So Gemara mishum bishulei nevela mishum basar nevela yavagav dikalamecha shel iser daraisa. Even though there's a severe concern of an iser daraisa, still loichashu lachsuke iser bigdeiris v'nesveka. This suffix that there might be an iser daraisa involved, the chachamim were not concerned about. Similarly, in our case, even a severe Isser, they won't be concerned about. We don't assume that the Jews right outside of the city, although they're very close, are actually handling with money that's from the Avodah Zarah itself. The name also limko elahem behema, that we would say because of that we would outlaw them selling behemoths to these goyim. Because the money that the Yid is going to receive for payment is the mei avodas kechavim, it's the money of Avodah Zarah. Because the animal is going to be sold, it's for the people that are the real Avodah Zarah, and therefore it's an Isser Deraisa. What is the Isser Deraisa here? You're not allowed to adin a henna from Avodah Zarah. Kol shekein heicha diadinon dishel min chutz lahen. Kol shekein, if you know that this money that you're receiving for the animal that you're selling is for sure from the people who live outside of the city, so it's for sure not coming from Avodah Zarah mamish. Now, what if for sure the money is coming from people that are out of the city, so there's no chash of the deraisa of money of Avodah Zarah? The chash could be that l'fnei yom yidayin, there's a gzera d'Rabbanan that you're not allowed to do business with them. So for sure, if I'm not worried about a potential isur deraisa, you're surely not worried about a potential isur d'Rabbanan. The l'savik isur d'Rabbanan l'chishinan the nema. What would you say? Dil mahai gavra shayich basar b'nei teicha. Maybe he's somehow connected to the Ovdei Avodah Zarah of people that live in the city. And maybe today is his Yom Tov. And by doing business with him, he's going to praise his God. Now you're going to be over in the Isur Rabbanon to do business with somebody who's an Ovdei Avodah Zarah on the day of their Yom Tov. The Ashru Yisrael, Allah says, Imam b'yoyim eid. So that for sure we're not worried about. If we're not even worried about a potential Isur Daraisa, we're for surely not worried about a potential Isur Darabanan. So Abaya takes the most kulantic stand that we're not even choshed for an Isur Daraisa, Kol Shekain, we're not choshed for Isur Darabanan. You're allowed to do business with someone who's literally right outside the city of Ovdei Avoda Zara. Now, about this concept that Rashi just said, that money of Avodah Zarah is Avodah Zarah, that's very, very controversial. Because Tosfos has, you can see there's a long Tosfos here, where Tosfos completely disagrees with Rashi. And he says that the money of Avodah Zarah, cash that even the Avodah Zarah has, is not usher to a Yid. Tachluve Avodah Zarah is usher, if a Yid had Avodah Zarah, and the Yid sold the Avodah Zarah, the money that he received for it will be usher by no. But not by a goy. Cash will not be usher. So Tosfos' challenge to Rashi is, what are you worried about? The money might be Avodah Zarah. There is no such thing. So Rabbeinu Tam says, and if I'm not mistaken, today's Rabbeinu Tam's yard site. Is it Dalit? Today is Dalit. I'm sure, is Rabbeinu Tam Dalit or Hey? Let me just see if we have the right yard site. I'm pretty sure that Rabbeinu Tam's yard site is Dalit Tamas. Let me just pull it up. 1 second. Pretty sure it's Rabbeinu Tam and a flow. Let's see. I have my dates right. I might be mixing it up tomorrow. Let me check. No, today's Rabbeinu Tam's yard site. So we'll be masking Rabbeinu Tam's shita, how he learns over here. Rabbeinu Tam was called Rabbeinu Tam because he was mamish an ish tamim. He was a pure soul. So Rabbeinu Tam says that Khalifa Avodas Kachavim is allowed. That's a goy who pays up his choiv from the Me'ovid Kachavim Shemochar. That's where we say it's not Toifes Estamel. However, the high the Amar the Avodas Kachavim Toifes Estamel Hainim B'Yisachem Kamayu V'Hainu Davkesh Keshechlifa Yisrael Ava Keshechlifa Ovid Kachavim Loi Shayach. So what is the problem over here? Is up to Rabbeinu Tam? Aval Hacha or Perk Emamidim Mairi She'Ovid Kachavim Mikatza Adomim L'Tzorech Avodas Kachavim Macheres U'Lechach Osir Adomim. It's speaking where he was already miyached this money to be given to a getchke. That already would take on an iser, even though it's only cash. So it's a much more narrow case. Stam money that a goy sold a getchke and has money from it, that would not constitute domim that would be osher b'anoah to a yid. If we are talking on the topic of yard sites, so it's the Rabbeinu Tam's yard site. It's also Rav Pinchas Halevi Horowitz, who was the Bala Flaw. It was his yard site as well today. And the Pinchas Halevi Horowitz was a very big speaker. He was an orator. He was a phenomenal speaker. And he was a big sensation for people, communities to invite him to be scholar in residence. But in his own community, nobody was really Gershom. So he used to always say about himself, I'm just like Parshas Pinchas. When Parshas Pinchas is a guest, it's on a Yom Tov, it's on a Rosh Chodesh, they learn excerpts of Parshas Pinchas, and he's a big celebrity. But when you learn Pinchas in his own hometown, in its own place, when is it? It's like during the 3 weeks when it's quiet, everybody's away, there's nothing doing. It's the same thing with me. When I'm home, nobody looks at me, it's nothing doing. But when I travel, that's when I'm a big sensation. Okay, so let's see.
He said it's only usher when it's miyached by a goy. Is there such a thing even? I mean, by a yid, if you're miyached something, it has a degree of permanence, right? But a guy can change his mind. A Jew's not allowed to change his mind about that.
By Avodah Zara, a Jew can't change his mind and take it away from Avodah Zara, but a goy could, right? If a goy could be mevatel Avodah Zara, a yid can't. But I guess this is speaking where he wasn't mevatel.
I'm not talking about mevatel. I'm talking about if you designate an animal, if a goy designates an animal for avodah zarah, there's no isser in nullifying that that designation
But could be
for a
the
good.
problem is could be there is a problem with taking that as payment for something that you give him until the guy changes his mind and says, "Okay, I'm not using it for Avodah anymore."
Okay.
I didn't really learn the Rabbeinu Tam thoroughly. I'm sure there's a lot of explanation there, Rabbeinu Tam. But I just wanted to mention it because of the kasha he has on Rashi, and it happens to be your side today. So I figured, we'll ask Rabbeinu Tam. So Zaklama Rava Amar, Rava says, in fact, we would be concerned about it, Nisha Daraisa. The comment that Chanina meant is only to tell us that it's an Isur Rabbanan we're not worried about. So Rav Amar Mai Lechashu Chachamim, it's Mishum Bishuli Oivdei Kechavim. There is no concern there of Nevela. And Rashi tells us that why there's no concern of Nevela. Zok Rashi, Hai Lechashu Lav Labas Nevela Ka'amar. And therefore, we should be able to learn from it that we're not choshid even for a potential of an Isur Daraisa, the Kavasal, the Nechel, the Me'avos Kechavim. The dummy, you can't compare. By us, there's a much greater chashash than there is by the two pots to be concerned that Nevela will show up in the Jew's pot. Why? Why would a guy take a good piece of meat, that's for him a good piece of meat, and put it into the Jew's pot? He has no benefit from that. I guess we're not choshit lahachas want to be machshul to eat, right? And umistafi the chazil Yisrael tava lebedina. He's also afraid that if the Yid catches him putting an Nevela into his pot, he's going to take him to Bezdin or to court to prosecute him and to charge him and to retrieve the losses. So that's not a chashash. If that was a chashash, in fact, it would be a real problem. But there's no such chashash there. The problem with the two pots is something else. They're cooking together. They're helping each other. And the concern here is the Jew might tell the guy, you know what, if you're there anyway, cook my food for me. And therefore, the whole concern here is this might lead to Bishalakum, which is only an Isur D'Rabbanan, and there, Reb Chanina said in Sur, they weren't concerned about that. So therefore, if you want to compare it to a case in our Mishnah that's similar, it would have to be a case where, at worst, we're only choshid that it's yoy midayhem, that you're doing business with them, but there's for sure no chash of an actual avodah zara. So v'hachadami heicha de pshita the davam alolu mitoich teva soylacham. If we're 100% sure that this money is the goy's personal money, if we're not sure, in fact, you wouldn't be able to sell him anything. But if you're sure that this is not avodah zara money, you're sure that the guy took this money from his own personal account, and therefore v'lekala meches l'sur deraisa, and there is no concern of a deraisa, then and only then lechashu chachamim l'safek isur derabanan. They're not worried about a safek isur derabanan that you're doing business with a guy before his day of avodah zara, and he's going to celebrate because of it. Even though this guy, I'm meeting him, I'm dealing with him out of the city, maybe he's still a member of that city and he's a Baal Avodah Zarah. And therefore, he's going to be happy and thank his Getchke for this good deal. So there's only a Safek D'Rabbanan, the Shakal, the Tari HaYisrael, Badei B'Yemedai. That's the only potential problem. There, Reb Chanina said, if it's out of the city, even though it's close by, you don't need to worry about it. But if there was a real concern that this was money of Avodah Zarah, you wouldn't be able to do business with this fellow. And now we have the third sheet that was the most machmir, Rabbi Bar Ula Amar, Lechoshu Lem Chachamim Mishum Tzinoira. The only thing they're not worried about is a stream, a spray of food from the goy's pot should squirt into the Jew's pot. And the reason why we're not worried is A, it's highly unlikely that that's going to happen. And B is, even if it does happen, it would be batal baroy. A little squirt of something, some content of the goyish pot falls into Jewish pot, there's a very small chance that anything can go wrong. That's the only thing they're not concerned about. But they would be concerned even about an Isur D'Rabbanan. And therefore, comparatively, the allowance that Reb Chanina is allowing you to do business with people near the city is only if there's no chashash for a real deraisa, there's no chashash for a real D'Rabbanan, only if it's a very remote chashash. We're not worried about lefnei yidayin. So on the Yom Eid Shalem, you wouldn't be able to do business with them. The 3 days before, that's where Reb Chanina said it's mutter. So when you read the Gemara and he says a city is close, is the itlis to Aza, there it's only allowed lifnei yidayin. But actually, on the day of the Yom Tov itself, where it's an Issur D'Rabbanan, there we would not allow it. Let's see Rashi inside. Rabbi Bar Ula Omar b'yomedim shel b'nei Aza lo yishara Reb Chanina laseis v'laseis in b'nei Etalusa. Reb Chanina was not matir on the actual day of the Yom Tov because that's a subject to Rabbanan. And you can't tell me that by shtei kederis we were not choshish about a real Issur D'Rabbanan. Because the Hazam Lekal Meiches Mishum Bishul Yav. There you don't even have a chashash of Bishul Yav. You know why? Because all the Jew has to do is to mish a little bit of flames in the coals, and that's good enough. That it won't be Bishul Akum, right? By us, you just turn the flame on, and the guy could do all the cooking, and there's no Bishul Akum. Michi Achti Yisrael Chadazim Begecholim. If the Yid just plays around with the coals and fires up the coals a little bit, that's enough that it's not Bishul Akum. So there's no problem of Bishul Akum here. If there was a real concern of Bishul Akum, they would not have allowed those two pots together. Aval Hacha, the only problem is a remote, slight chance of not even a real issue occurring. Here the concern is that this guy might be a member of the Bnei Avoda Zara inside the city. Why? Because we're very close to that city. The Mishnah said chutzala is mutter. It's allowed b'smuchu kula hakamar. It's not when it's that close. If it's very close, like the itlis to Aza, there you would not be able to do business with a goy b'yoyim ideyat, even though this guy is not in the city, because we're choshid to a real D'Rabbanan that this fellow might be a member of the city who does Avodah Zarah. So what case did Reb Chanina allow it? Reb Chanina lefnei yidayin hu l'shar. The 3 days before the Yom Tov, that's where he allowed it, which was the extra Gzeir D'Rabbanan. V'yochi k'amar lechoshu lem chachamim l'shem nitzat tzinoira mitoich kederes oivit k'chavim. The only thing in Sur that they weren't choshit for is not as the Rashi that they would have been worried about, and this is the D'Rabbanan they would have also been worried about. It's this remote, slight issur that they were makel with, and that is l'shem nitzat tzinoira mitoich kederes oivit k'chavim mitoich kederes Yisrael. Why aren't they worried? For two reasons. Hayov Isser Kalu. It's a light Isser. Why is it a light Isser? Because it's not common for that to occur. A little stream of water in a big pot would be bottled anyway. That's the type of Isser that Reb Chanina is indicating we're not concerned about. So how would that parallel Isser play itself out, manifest itself in the case of the closed city with Avodah Zarah? Oh, actually, we have to change the gears here. Let's look at the Yudalit. So too, they weren't choishes for the chutzala of lifnei ideyan, the days before the Yom Tov. So Uza is allowed. You're allowed to do business with people of the Itlas for Uza, which is very, very close. That's only on the days before the Yom of Eid. But the day of Eid itself, even in the closed place, you wouldn't be allowed. You'd have to go further away. Okay, so those are the three shittas in Reb Chanina's explanation of our Mishnah of how far away you have to be in order to be able to do business with these people. Now the Gemara wants to know about this Maris Ayin Shaila. Are you allowed to go to a city of Avodah Zarah, not to do Avodah Zarah, just to meet somebody, you have personal business there, or is there a problem of Maris Ayin? Tell her about a city that has getchkas in it. You're not allowed to go into the city, nor are you allowed to go mitoicha liracheres. Divrei Reb Meir, that's the words of Reb Meir. If the only place you could be going to when you're traveling towards that place is that place, so then it's Maris Ayin, because everyone knows you're headed in that direction. But if the road that you're on might take you to other places as well, or let's say you're on a train and there's other stops, so there's no reason to assume that you're going to get off at that stop in the city of Avodah Zarah, mutter will be mutter. What about Yoshev loy koitz b'fnei avodas k'chav? What if someone got a splinter right in front of a getchka? So right away, what you want to do is bend down and pull the splinter out. But you don't want to bend down in front of the Avoda Zara. Lo yishcha v'yitlena. Don't bend down and take out the splinter right there in front of Avoda Zara. An outsider watching you bend down doesn't realize you're pulling a splinter, and he might think that you're doing Avoda Zara. But if it doesn't look like it, if you could do it in such a way, Rashi the Gemara says Rashi says first come on, but the Gemara is going to say if you could do it in such a way where it doesn't look like you're doing Avoda Zara, like you sit on the floor and take a break and then you pull it out, but you don't bow down, so then it'll be mutter because it doesn't look like you're doing Avoda Zara. What happens if you dropped a whole bunch of money on the floor right in front of the getchka? So you're going to bend down and pick up the money. It looks like you're bowing down to the getchka. So the yishcha v'yitleim. Why? But again, if you do it in such a way where it's not obvious, mutter, it will be mutter. What about ma'ayin hamoishech lefnei avodas kachavim? There's a spring that's running right in front of where a getchka is placed, and you want to drink fresh water. Lo yishcha v'yishta. You shouldn't bend down to drink from that stream. That also looks like you're bowing down. But if you could do it in such a way where it doesn't look like you're bowing down to Avodah Zarah, mutter. In the big cities in those days, they would have public drinking fountains, but the fountains would be in the form of an idol of a human, and the water would be pouring out of the mouth. They would pump water in through the top, and then the water would run out of the mouth of this statue. So when you're drinking from it, it literally looks like you're kissing the statue. So state in the Gemara, Loi Yediach Piv al Piem, don't drink right out of the fountain, which looks like you're kissing the Avodah Zarah, v'yishta b'pnei sheyirah kemenashek la'avodas kachavim, and it's also to kiss a getchka. Similarly, Lo Yediach Piv al Silon v'yishta. What if it's a standard type of spout, not in the shape of an Avodah Zarah? Could you drink straight from the spout? You should not. Mepnei asakana, because there's a danger involved, which the Gemara will explain what the danger is. Zok Gemara, my eini nira. We had several cases where if it's not nira, then you're allowed to bow down. If loy nira means that sure you're bowing down, but it's in a concealed area where nobody will see you. That doesn't make a difference. Anytime there's an Isser of Maris Ayin, it's Asr afilu b'chadr chadorim Asr. It's Asr even if nobody can see you. Maris Ayin is Asr even if nobody can see you. There's no heter of Maris Ayin, nobody can see me. It's Asr even though nobody can see you. And I believe Rashi says why. Afilu b'chadr chadorim b'mokum she'ein adam raya asru. They still said it's Asr. No, he doesn't say why. Okay. Elo'ema. So let's say that the reason is. 1 second. I thought I saw a reason for that. Zok to Gemara. It doesn't mean if no one can see you. It means if the way you do it is in such a way where it doesn't look like you're bowing down to the getchka, like you sit down to take a rest and then you drink, or you sit to take a rest and you pull your splinter, so it doesn't look like you're bowing down because you're not. You're sitting down. So that's where it would be relevant. Frank Gemara, why do we need these 4 cases listed? Splinter, money, and drink, and then the 4th thing we do. Why do we need all these cases where the Mishnah really, or the Gemara is telling us the same halacha over and over again? Is it a Mishnah? Is it a Brisa? Let's see where it is. I guess it's a Brisa. So why do we need all these cases? It's basically the same case over and over again. In each case, the thing that you're doing looks like you're doing Avodah Zarah. Talking about Tricha. The Tana Kites, if it's just telling us that you're not allowed to bow down to take out your thorn, because you could go further. You don't have to stop right there in front of the getchka. So there's a rock on your shoe. Take another few steps and then do it. Kamash Malon. So that's why it's also. Avol mois. But if someone dropped money, sure, he can't take a couple of steps to bend down. He's got to bend down right there where the money is. So Emaloi, there I might have thought that you're allowed to bow down even in front of the getchke to get money. Vitan the mois, and if it only had to kiss a mois, that's because the moino. It's only money, big deal. So that's why it's prohibited. Avol koitz, but a thorn did sire where there's a physical pain. Maybe there you would be allowed to bed down right in front of Avoda Zara.
Yes, some people the coins is more pain than thorn.
I'm sorry?
For some people, the coins are more pain than the thorn.
I was thinking for some people, it's the Avoda Zara isn't the getchke, it's the money. So I agree with you. And if we knew these two things were prohibited, there's no grave danger in not picking up your money. There's no grave danger in having a splinter. But if you're thirsty for a drink, that you could die if you don't have the proper fluids. It's possible that if you're very, very thirsty and you're in danger of dying, there you might think a maloi, you might think that you are allowed to bend down, you are allowed to bend down. Shricha, even there, it would not be allowed. Okay, what about partzufois? What about the case of those fountains that looked like humans that had water coming out of the mouths where you're not allowed to drink from there? Lomali, really that's a redundant case because we already had the case of ma'ayin, meaning even if someone's in danger of dying from thirst, he still is not allowed to bend down. So the case of partzufois is redundant, but it only quoted that because of the next case. Because the Brisa wanted to tell us the case of not drinking from a public fountain. So once it's talking about a public fountain, it threw in the case of partzufois. What is the chiddush of a public fountain? Aluka. Aluka was some type of parasite that was found in water. And if you drink from a fountain without checking the water carefully, you could ingest a parasite that was something like it was like a bloodsucker. What's the word for those animals? A leech, and that will latch on to someone internally, and it could be fatal. That's why the Brasha says you shouldn't do that. Taner Rabbanan, lo yishta adam mayim lo minan nahar. You shouldn't drink water straight from the river. Again, you might drink up without even realizing these small parasites. V'lo min agamim, and not from swamps. Lo b'piv, not directly with your mouth, slurping from the stream. V'lo b'yodeyachas, and not just like taking with one hand and splashing the water into your mouth. Again, because you're not able to carefully analyze what's in that water. V'imshasa, and if you do that and you're reckless, damai b'roishai v'pnei sakana. You're responsible for your own sickness that you might contract because of that, because you shouldn't have done something so reckless. My sakana saluka, because in the water they could be very small parasites that you'll ingest, and then they'll grow into big parasites inside you and destroy your internals. If someone drinks water with an aluka in it, so if you do swallow one of these, your life is in danger, and therefore muter lahachem loichamin b'Shabbos. You're even allowed to cook water on Shabbos because you're considered someone who's in a matzav of sakanas nefashos. Someone did swallow one of these parasites. The hitter of Nehemiah lahachem loichamin b'Shabbos. Adhachi v'hachi. But what until it takes time to cook up water? What do you do until you cook up the water to slow this death? You should drink vinegar until the hot water is ready. Drink vinegar. That'll slow things down. As Rashi says, let the patient drink vinegar, so he shouldn't die before he has a chance to use this remedy. If someone swallows a zibura, tzira, some type of bad insect, he will not survive. It's impossible to survive. Miu, nevertheless, l'shakir reviyasa dechal shamgas, have him drink a revius of very strong vinegar. After dechal porto, it'll at least extend somewhat his life at the mifkad abese, so that he could settle his affairs. So he's for sure dying if he ingests a tzira. The question is to prolong his life long enough so that he could survive to settle his affairs. Now Rashi tells
It's a
us,
hornet.
I'm sorry, it's something like a hornet. Okay. The Gemara says don't drink from a stream or even with one hand. So what are you supposed to do? How do you drink from a stream? So Rashi says, Avol b'shtei yadav, if you cup your hands and you fill up your hands with water, there you can hold the water there and you could look carefully in the water that you have cupped in your hands to see if it has any parasites. So that's the way you drink. Drinking straight from the stream, you might ingest a parasite. Splashing water with your hand into your mouth, you might ingest a parasite. But if you scoop up water in your hand, now you have a little bit of water in your hand that you can look at closely and you could check to make sure there are no parasites in it. And that's the only way you should drink, because that'll keep you safe. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Taner Rabbanan. Lo yishta adam mayim b'layla. A person should never drink water at night. V'mshasa, and if you drank water at night, damai b'roishai. It's reckless, and if someone becomes sick because of it, it's his own fault. Mipnei sakana. My sakana, Zok to Gemara, sakanas shavriri. Shavriri is some type of shade. Rajat shade. Hamamuna al makas and verim. We know by Lot, the Malach was makah the people of Sodom outside Lot's house with Sanverim, which is blindness. So the Malach makes things blind. So you're not supposed to drink water at night because these shadim have rule then. Vitzachi, what if you're thirsty and you need a drink? What are you supposed to do? Maitakante. Zok Gemara, you have two options. If you have somebody there with you, I'ika achrina bahadei. He's sleeping. Wake him up. Liasre, wake him up. And tell him, I'm thirsty for water. That noise, that discussion will scare away the shadim. If there's two people talking, the shadim get scared away, and then it's not dangerous to drink the water. But Viloi, what if you're by yourself? Then you have to create an image so that the shade should think there's more people there that'll scare him away. What should you do? Nekarkesh benachtama achatzva, which Rashi says, take the cover of a barrel and bang on top of the barrel. So it sounds like it's noisy. It sounds like there's people there. And then you have to say a little lachash, a potion you have to say. The name of Il and this is what you say. Planya bar planisa. So your name, ben your mother's name. Amrlach imach, your mother said, is dar, be careful, mishvidi, bridi, ridi, yidi, ri. Bekase chiyure in a white cois. So Rashi just says that you're sort of diminishing the name of the shade. You start off with his first name, the full name Shaviridi, but then you continue to diminish his name. So Rashi is lachashu u'mismayt v'hoylech mishem hashade. So he's like diminishing the shade. Kashu shemeya miut tevus ois achar ois adri. That's the lachash that will chase away the shade from there. Okay, so it's an interesting lachash to say to scare away the shade. What happens if there was a city that there's getchkes there, but not necessarily is every person in the city, subservient to the Avoda Zara? So what is the litmus test? How do you know which stores are subservient to the Avoda Zara where you shouldn't do business, and which stores you might be able to do business with? There are some stores that are all decorated, decorated for the season, right? Lights and all the other things. But there are some stores that are not mutar at all. Clearly, they're not part of this religion. Mutar means they're decorated. So this exact scenario played itself out in Beishan. Zok Rashi. On the day of their Avoda Zara, they would actually be open for business. They'd have a sale. And nowadays it doesn't work that way. The unions got involved. But in those days, that was not a day where you took off. That was a day where they had sales. They had decorated stores. When a store is decorated, it's a sign. Do you know that when you fill out your taxes, there's a checkbox that says, do you want to support the public school system or the Catholic school system? right? So you can decide, you can sort of earmark where your tax dollars are going to. So it seems like it was similar in those days as well. That these stores are stores that their taxes will go to the Catholic system, to the Avodah Chavim. Mutaris Asuris Mefarish B'Gemara. But she'ein mutaris, the ba'oiton she'ein mutaris, lo shaklu mimanu michza l'avodas kachavim. Their tax dollars don't go to the Avodah Zara, mati l'avodas kachavim hanomina. They don't benefit from these stores. So if you're buying in that store, you don't have to worry that the proceeds are going to go to the Avodah Zara. The proceeds will go to the regular municipality. There was a rule, you're not allowed to do business with a guy on the day of the Avodah Zara. Why isn't that a problem? Is this Rabbanon? That's only if you're selling them product. Dilma mizvin le behema v'azul mikra v'lo l'avodas kachavim. Because you might sell them an animal, and then they're going to use that for the actual sacrifice. That's not allowed. Inami derech lekeach liyasameach v'azul, or no matter what you sell them. There's a svara we had at the beginning of the Masechta. The lekeach is so happy with his purchase, it's going to make him praise his getchke. But to buy something from them that's non-perishable, that they're not looking to get rid of, sorry, that would be mutter. People are sad they have to part with their goods. So to summarize the Mishnah, when there's no chash of yomi deyam, because you're not selling them animals, you're buying something that's non-perishable from them, even then you should stay away from stores where you know the proceeds are going to the Avodah Zara. Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish, lo yishanu ela mutaros bevered v'hadas. It has to be a special type of decoration. Rashi is vered v'hadas shel takruvas avodas kachavim. They actually use these roses and hadassim that they actually use to serve the Avodah Zara. And that's a clear sign that the proceeds of this store goes to Avodah Zara. Now it seems like these stores, the real estate, belong to the church, and people who sold the Bechemeni was merely renting from them, and they had to give a big portion of their profits to the landlord. So basically, when you're buying something, it's going straight to the Avodah Zara. The Komisani Merecha, because you're having a no from the Reach. Now, this is a little bit misleading. The Gemara is going to clarify it, because it sounds like the problem isn't that you're giving them money for Avodah Zara. The problem is that you're having a no from Takruvas Avodah Zara. The Komisani Merecha vered v'hadas derech l'shotchan lofnei avodas kachavim. The norm is to put these sweet-smelling items in front of the getchkes v'asurin mishum Takruvas Avodas kachavim. Aval mutaris beperis, but if they're merely decorated with peris mutaris, my time with Amar Kra. The issue is that you're having a no from the Avodah Zara, but you buying from them, which you're being mahana them, that you're allowed to do. Again, this is just a havamina, because we learned Rashi in the Mishnah where you're not allowed to be mahana them. But at this point in the Gemara is thinking that the whole problem here is that you're having enough from the nice spices that are Takruvas Avodah Zara. But if it wasn't sweet smelling, that there's no problem of being mahana hektish. Of a mahana, sorry, but you are allowed to be mahana hektish. That's what Reish Lakish said. Rabbi Yechon Amar, afilu mi'utaris beperis nama yoser, kal v'chomer. If nehen is yoser, if it's also to have a no from the Avodah Zara, mahana like kol shegein, surely it would be yoser to be mahana the Avodah Zara. As Rashi said, mahana like kol shegein, v'ha mahanahu. If you're buying a non-perishable item from a guy, you're giving him an no. Or no matter what you're buying from them. The chenveni, the storekeeper, what they're really doing is they're just running the money and the business on behalf of the priests, because the priests own the real estate, they own the store. Inami, hu yoyev lebal hachanus, let's see what Rashi is. Lebal hachanus hamois, even though you're paying the store owner, you're not paying the getchke, but nevertheless, even if he's giving the money to the store owner, ultimately the store owner is passing it up to the owner of the property, to the church. But if it doesn't have those special decorations, lav the karminain, it means these are not corporate stores. They're not owned by the priests, they're owned by the individual, and therefore it's not going to Avodah Zarah. Okay, we'll stop here, Bez Hashem, and we will continue tomorrow. Go ahead.